Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Alluring Bead Boutiques Design channel. My name's Katrina, and I'm here today. I'm going to show you guys how I created this little beaded bezel for these little beautiful stone beads that I had recently gotten at Michael's. And these little round stones are 25 millimeters, and they're coin shaped. And they just have the one hole running through them here. I just thought that they were really unique and with this little mosaic look. They're constituted stone, but they're really beautiful. They have this little mosaic look to them. And so I bought a couple of strands of them over at Michael's. You know, I wanted to figure out something that I could do with it and maybe figure out a way to set it like a cabochon. And I managed to work out a pretty decent design. Now, this is actually the third design that I've come up with. The first two I liked okay, and I'm going to have some photos of those and talk a little bit about it on my blog post coming up soon at the Bead Mat, and I'll throw some links to you guys up in the information above and down in the description box below if you want to go check out the alternate versions of this particular little piece. But let's talk about what we're going to need to get started with this. So we're going to need a 25 millimeter round cabochon or little stone coin bead like this. Now for the larger beads that I used here, I have, they're both 4 millimeters. These are fire polish and they are opaque turquoise. And then for the bicones, these are peridot 4 millimeter bicones with a AB finish or the rainbow finish. You're going to need some fire line, and I'm using the 6-pound fire line. And the beading needle I'm using is a size 11 pony beading needle. And the way I thread my needles is I just go ahead and take a pair of flat nose pliers like these, and I mash the end of the thread a little bit between the plier jaws and get it nice and flat. And then generally it will thread into the needle really a lot easier if you'll go ahead and mash it just a little bit. Then I just get myself a little bit of tail through there. And I'll be using a wingspan of this fire line for my project. So if you want to go ahead and get your supplies out, make sure that you have 36 super duos, some type of 25 millimeter cabochon or coin flat bead like that, and 2 colors of 11-0, your fire line, and your needle threaded. All right, I'll be right back. All right, so I'm back, and I went in and cleaned up my workspace, and I moved a lot of bulky things out of my way because I don't like for my thread to get hung up around my workstation. So I'm ready to get started, and I've got a wingspan onto my needle. So to get started, we're going to pick up a sequence of C beads. We're going to pick up one of our color A11s, and I'm going to be using the milky teals for those. So pick up one of those, one of the peridot, and one more of the turquoise, and then pick up one of your main color of super duo. And we're going to repeat that sequence 12 times. So just go ahead and pick up until you have 12 sets of the 3 C beads and 12 of your super duos, just like this. So I got all my 12 sets of beads strung on to my thread, and I left myself just a couple of inches of tail down here because we don't need a whole lot, just enough to hold on to. And you can check the amount of beads that you strung on with your component here to make sure that they fit nicely and butt up against the stone just like this. When I first was trying to figure out how to do this, I just kept measuring until I got the right amount of beads in between. And I wanted a nice number that was divisible by 4 of the super duos, for embellishment purposes. And, later on, maybe if we needed to add a bail or something like that. So 12 is a good number, and I was able to work it out to where this sequence works out great for this particular size stone or bead. So then all I did was I went back through all of my beads again, and I've come around until my tail thread and working thread are exiting right beside each other. So the tail thread's coming out of the first bead I picked up. My working thread is now coming back out of the second, or the last bead that I picked up. So now I'm just going to tie 2 overhand knots. And that will keep my work nice and secure as I move on. So when I tie my knots, I want to make sure that those 2 little knots fall right down in between those same 2 beads where my threads were exiting. So now we need to move on. So what we're going to do, we're coming out of that super duo last. So what we want to do, I'm going to flip my work over because I'm left-handed and I like working towards the right. So now I'm going to push through my 3 seed beads in the next super duo. And when I pull, I'm going to pull until I feel my knot pop into those beads. And now we can move on to the next step. So we're exiting from the bottom hole of that super duo. So we're going to reverse direction. We're going to come through the top hole of the super duo back towards myself here. And then I'm just going to flip my work one more time so I can work in the direction that I like to work in. So now we're going to add the middle set of super duos. And I'm just going to be using these turquoise beads. So I'll pick up an 11-0, one of my transparent super duos, and an 11-0. And I'm going to come through the top hole of the very next super duo in the direction I'm working. And I'm going to just repeat that step right there 12 times, or well, 11 more times, for a total of 12. So 11-0, super duo, 11-0, go through the next one. And like I said, just keep doing that until you have all of the beads added between all of your super duos. And once I get that done, I'll be right back and we'll move on. And so I'm coming back around and I've got my last 3 beads on my needle, and I'm coming through the very first super duo that I started from. Sorry guys, got hung up there just a little bit. So now that I've come back around, I'm going to be rolling my beadwork so that my super duos start flowing up and down like this. Because I want them to be able to come around the side of this stone that I'm going to be setting in here. And I think I left myself just a little bit too long of a tail, but for right now I'm just going to leave it as it is. So now what we want to do is we want to reinforce this whole circle of beads that we just added. And just to do that, you're just going to pass through your 11-0, super duo, 11-0, super duo, 11-0, super duo. And you're going to repeat that until you get all the way around for the count of 24 sets. So I went through 2 of them. So now I'm going to go through this next super duo and my 11-0s until I've come all the way around. And I'll know when I've come all the way around because I'll be close to where my tail thread is. But as you're reinforcing, go ahead and pull so that your beads start sitting on this little slant like that. So I've come all the way back around, and I'm just going to lay my beadwork here on my stone so you can get an idea of what it's going to look like. So this ring of beads is going to be on the back side, just like that. So now I've come around, and I'm exiting from the super duo I started from, but I want to move forward until I'm exiting the next transparent bead, which I added in that last round, which is going to be our middle section of super duos. So now that I'm exiting from that bead, I'm going to once again step up by reversing direction and come through the open hole at the top of that bead and pull my thread through. And my tail thread, because I got it too long, it's kind of getting in the way a little bit, but that's all right. So now we're going to add our next set of super duos, our last set. And we're going to add those just using these turquoise beads like we did in the previous round. So I'm going to pick up a turquoise 11-0, one of my matte super duos, and a turquoise 11-0. And I'm going to come through that next transparent super duo. And this time I didn't flip my work because this is going to be the top side of my beadwork. So I'm just going to go ahead and work in the opposite direction here. So I'm picking up my 11-0 matte super duo and 11-0 and come through the next one. And I'm just going to keep on repeating that until I've added beads all the way around this beadwork. So now we just need to reinforce this row. So just go ahead and pass through all of the beads on this row one more time. So you'll be going through your seed bead, matte super duo, seed bead, then your transparent super duo. And you're going to repeat that all the way around, so you'll know you'll have to count that out 12 times. And if you accidentally go through one too many or whatever, just keep going because you're going to go through all of them anyway. Just make sure that you don't skip any or you will have exposed thread. And, you know, we don't want that. So if you want to go ahead and get your reinforcement done, and when you've went all the way around, meet me back. So once you've come all the way around, you should have been exiting one of the super duos on your center row. But I want next you know to push forward through your next seed bead and one of your super duos from your last row, which is the third row. And I dropped mine right in the floor. Okay, so, and see my needle went through the loop, so I'm going to come out of there. I do that a lot, but the trick to it is to make sure you don't pull it tight until you can get your thread out. All right, so now I'm exiting this super duo from my third row of super duos. So once again, I'm going to reverse direction. I'm coming out of the bottom of that super duo towards the center of the beadwork. I'm going to go through the open hole at the top, back towards myself, and pull my thread all the way through. So now I am working again in the opposite direction. So this is the top. Where my super duos are loose and floppy is the top of my bezel. And my stone's going to fit in there pretty good. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add this last little set of beads that's going to pull this nice and tight over the top of our little cabochon like that. And now on this particular one here, I used the 4mm turquoise fire polish. So here are the little turquoise fire polish that I used on my first one. And they're just pretty little opaque turquoise. But I think for this one, I'm going to use these forest green with the AB finish fire polish beads. And I got these at Hobby Lobby. So now what we're going to do is, you don't need any seed beads, so just pick up a fire polish. I'm exiting from the top of that matte super duo, and I'm heading towards the right. So I'm just going to sew through the top hole of my next super duo. And I'm going to repeat that until I've added my 12 little fire polish beads all the way around. But I'm not going to pull my work extremely tight yet. I'm just going to get my beads into place so that once I'm all the way around, then I can tighten it up and put my stone in and tighten everything up. So go ahead and put your little fire polish beads in between each one of these super duos. And then pause me and meet me back when you have those in place. And I'll show you how we'll go ahead and set the stone in. Alright, so I'm back and I'm adding my last little fire polish bead. So I'm coming out of the top of that super duo there. And I'm going to go in through the top of the first super duo I started from. And I'm going to pull that bead in. Now, before I start making this tight, I'm going to go ahead and get my little stone in here. So I'm holding my finger on the back side of my beadwork like this, where my tail thread is. And I'm just going to lay my stone right down into that little cup. And now I'm going to start pulling my work a little tighter around like this. Just a little at a time. And until I get my stone in there. If you'll pull gently and just keep working it, you know, just a little at a time, your stone will set into that cup really nice. Now we're going to work around the back side and do a little extra beadwork over there, but you want to make sure that you're pulling nice and gentle so that you don't flop your stone out on the back side of your beadwork. So now I want you to just go on through and reinforce this last circle of beads one more time by passing through the crystals and the super duos all again. And make sure that you don't skip any. And just try to your best to, stay calm, because we will get the stone in. We just want to reinforce the circle of beads. And when you get done reinforcing it, if your stone comes out a little bit, don't panic. Just keep putting it back in until you get all the way around. Nice and gentle. Just like that. And then I'm going to show you what we'll do next to reinforce the back side of this beadwork so that our stone is nice and secure. And I'm coming all the way back around, and I'm going to pass through my last few crystals and super duos, and I want to make sure that I'm exiting from one of my super duos. So now that I'm exiting that super duo, I'm coming out of that top hole closest to a crystal. So now I'm going to come back through that super duo in the opposite direction in the bottom hole, just like that. And pull my thread through. I'm going to push forward one seed bead and one super into that next super duo, which is in the middle. And that's my transparent green. So I'm going to push through the seed bead and the top hole of that transparent green super duo. I had it in there and I pulled my needle out somehow. I'll pull my thread through there. So now I'm coming out of the top hole of that transparent green. I'm going to go through the bottom hole in the opposite direction. And I'm going to push through the next seed bead and into my next matte super duo, and just the super duo. And now I'm coming out of the top hole of that matte green super duo. I'm going to pass in the opposite direction through the bottom hole of that super duo, and I'm going to push forward through my seed beads until I get into that next super duo. So there I got through the super duo, my 3 seed beads. I pull my thread through. Then I'm just going to push into just that super duo right there. But now you can see that the top part of the little bezel is nice and secure. And the back, the stone is in there. It's not going to come out. But it was a little bit loose, so I figured out a little step to take that will cinch this down a little bit more and just make it look a little more nicely finished, like on this one. And we're going to use these little peridot rainbow seed beads for this. So now I'm coming out of the bottom hole, which is closest to my stone of that super duo. So I'm going to pick up one of my 11/0 little peridot beads, and I'm going to stitch up through just the bottom hole of the transparent super duo. Let me see if I can just get in that bead right there. So pick up one of your 11/0s and sew through the bottom hole closest to you of that center row super duo, and pull that little seed bead until it pops into place right there. Then we're going to pick up another one, and we're going to sew through. We're coming out of the bottom hole of this transparent super duo here. We're going to sew through the bottom hole on our center ring of the next matte super duo. Yeah, I'm getting a little trouble with my needle here, but I'll get it. So I'm going to come through the bottom hole of that super duo closest to the center of my beadwork. And I'll pull that little seed bead in. And you kind of feel them pop into place there in between those, excuse me, see if I can get them to show up. There's the 2 little green seed beads. And you'll feel them pop into that little section there. And that's just going to give us pull our beadwork down just a little bit. So now I'm going to pick up another one. I'm coming out of the bottom hole of my matte Super Duo. I'm going to go through the bottom hole of my next transparent Super Duo, or the one on the center ring, up above. Now pull. And I'm just going to repeat that, pick up my 11-0, and come through the bottom hole of the next Super Duo here on the base row, right there in the center of the beadwork. And if you can't get through just the Super Duo and you have to push through your 11-0, you can go ahead, pull your 11-0 into position, and then just back out of that turquoise bead, like that. And I'm just going to keep working like that all the way around my beadwork. And you can see how it's pulling this edge down, so it scoops down over the top of my stone. And that's what I want it to do. Just make sure that you're going through the bottom holes of the Super Duos that you're working with on your first row and your second row of Super Duos. So I'm coming through and I'm adding my last seed bead here. And I'm coming out of the bottom hole of that transparent Super Duo, and I'm going through the bottom hole of this matte Super Duo on my center ring. And I'm also going to push through those 3 seed beads. Pull that little bead in. Pop it into place. Now I'm just going to reinforce this center circle of beads one more time. So that's just the very first row we started from. The Super Duos and the 3 little seed beads in between each one. And I'm just going to reinforce all the way around this circle and pull it nice and tight. Now it's going to be tight getting through there with your needle, but just go ahead and keep working until you get through all of those beads. The trick here is to make sure that you're just only hitting these center circle beads from row 1, and make sure that your tail thread doesn't get hung up into your stitching. Just pull it nice and secure and kind of bring it over the top of your little stone just a little bit more as you work, and make sure you're pulling nice and snug. So I've come all the way around and I've tightened up my little inner circle of beads, and I'm exiting from that Super Duo right there on the inner edge. So I'm going to reverse direction one more time, and I'm going to come back through that Super Duo into the upper hole in the opposite direction. So now I'm coming out of that bottom hole towards the back side of my beadwork of that Super Duo in the middle row, the transparent. And now I'm going to add my embellishment row of crystals here to the outside edge. And to do that, I apologize at the beginning I didn't mention the 15-0 seed beads, but you're going to need 12 of your bicone crystals, and you're going to need some 15-0 seed beads. On this one, I used the little permanent finish aluminum seed beads in between, or on both sides of the crystal. And for this one, I'm going to use these Silverline Grass Green Toho 15-0s. So I'm coming out of that Super Duo. I'm going to pick up a 15-0, a bicone, and a 15-0. And we're going to only be working with these Super Duos in the middle row here. So I'm coming out of the bottom of this one. I'm going to go through the top hole of the next one to the right, because I'm working in that direction. And I'm going to pull, and my little seed beads and crystals are going to sit right there in between those 2 Super Duos. Like that. And I'm just going to repeat that, but I'm going to alternate the hole that I go through on the Super Duo. And I'll pick up my 15-0, bicone, and 15-0. This time I'm coming out of the top of this next Super Duo, so I'm going to go through the bottom hole of the transparent Super Duo next on my center row. And I'm going to repeat that, alternating between the top and bottom holes till I come all the way around. So one more time, I'm going to pick up my 15-0, bicone, and 15-0. Now I'm coming out of the bottom of that Super Duo, so I need to go through the top hole of the next Super Duo. And so you can see that they're sitting like a little cat, little cattywampus along this line of thread, along this line of beads. But that's okay, because on the next round we're going to come through and straighten them. I'm adding my last 15-0 crystal 15-0, and I'm coming back through the very first Super Duo I started from. And we're coming through the bottom hole, which is the same hole that we started out in. But now we're going to need to straighten up our crystals. So in order to do that, we're going to reverse directions. So we're coming out of the bottom hole of that transparent super duo. All I want you to do is step up through the top hole of that super duo, back in the opposite direction. So come back through the same super duo you're exiting, but I want you just to come through just the top hole right there, like that. Give everything a nice little, make sure you don't get hung up on your crystal there. I almost did. Just give everything a nice snug little pull like that. So now we've reversed direction. And we're going to take some steps here just to straighten up our crystals and reinforce this row. So now we're coming out of that super duo. We want to go through the 15-0, the crystal, and the 15-0 that we added in the previous round. So take your time. Because mine are all green, I'm having a little bit of a hard time seeing them. But I'm coming through the 15-0, the crystal, and the 15-0. Don't let it get hung up on your other beads. So now I was coming out of the top of that super duo, so I need to go through the bottom of the super duo, the next super duo. And this is going to be some needle bending work, but go through the bottom hole. We're just basically putting a thread bridge between both holes of the super duo in our little sets of crystals. So now I'm coming out of the bottom of that super duo. So I need to step into the 15-0 crystal and 15-0 between this set of super duo beads. And we're coming through the crystal, the 15-0 crystal and 15-0. And I was coming out of the bottom of that super duo, so now I need to go through the top of this next one. And I'm just going to keep doing that as I work my way around, and you can see how it's straightening up my crystals so that they are turned into a straight line all the way back around the beadwork. If you get confused, you can easily tell which hole of the super duo you went through the first time, because the beads will be pointing to that hole. So, for example, this next 15-0 crystal and 15-0 here are pointing and connecting to the top of that super duo in front of it. So that lets me know on this round, I need to go through the bottom hole of that super duo. So I'll have a thread bridge coming out of both holes of my super duo and passing through my embellishment beads. And that is how we will straighten up our beadwork, or our crystal embellishments. And if you get your thread hung around, make sure that you pick it back off of there before you pull too tight. You can see how nicely that's straightening up my crystals. So I'm going to go ahead and finish my straightening round, and I'll meet you back. So I'm coming through the last super duo from straightening up my crystals here. And I'm going to go ahead and push through that next little seed bead. And then I'm going to push into the top hole of that next super duo, which is the matte super duo here from my base row. And I'm going to try to just get through that bead, but if I accidentally go through a different bead, I can just back out, just like I've been showing you how to back out. Just make sure you get only through that super duo, like that. So now we've pretty much finished the embellishment for our little cute little cabochon or bead stone, whichever you want to call it. In essence, what I've done is I've took a stone bead and I've made it look like a cabochon setting. So now we can end our thread. So we're coming out of this super duo here at the top, and we can just go through the bottom hole of that super duo in the opposite direction to get into the very base row of beads that we started this whole project with, which is down here where our super duo and our 3 seed beads are. And so now I've passed through that super duo and I'm onto the base row. And I would just stitch around until my threads meets up with my tail thread here. And then I can tie some knots and end my thread. So now I've worked myself around till my 2 threads are coming out in the same spot. And so what I'm going to do is just tie a couple of little overhand knots, and I'm going to make sure my threads were coming out between that super duo and that seed bead here on my right. So when I pull my knot, I want it to fall in between those same 2 beads, that super duo and the 11-0 turquoise. Do one more. Make sure my knot falls in the right spot. And then before I cut my thread, I want to push through a few beads. So at least get through one of your the 11-0 seed bead, and kind of suck the knot up into that bead. You'll feel it pop in. If your beadwork isn't too tight and you want to move up a few more, go ahead. Mine's really tight, and so I'm just going to go ahead and end my 2 threads. And so I haven't ended the thread on this one yet, but here are my 2 pieces of this beautiful mosaic howlite set into these beaded bezels. Alright guys, so that is it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure you're subscribed to the bead mat. Choose your access level for more exclusive tutorials from the bead mat and the alluringbeadboutique.com. This is Katrina signing off.